Wednesday, September 11th, 2024. One of those dates that holds the same magnitude no matter how far away you get from it. It still feels like a fresh wound. I still remember everything about that morning, as does anyone who is around for it. I was in the second grade at the time, and I'd just gotten to school, and it basically had what was akin to a public access channel that they would put on for the kids to kind of get them engaged and awake and alert to start the day that they would put on. And it was typically either Fat Albert or Arthur, one of those shows that's just been around forever that would be on. And they'd have that on for like 15 minutes. We would go over the news from the day before, and then it would start the day, which actually is pretty advanced looking back on it, considering it was a second grade class. But that day, we had gotten through maybe 5 minutes of the typically 15 to 20 of watching one of the kids' shows, and the teacher went over and changed the channel to actual TV, which anybody who went to school in that era was like, no way. What could possibly be going on? Because they wouldn't do that for anything. And she changed the channel to regular news, and that's how the news broke to us that that's what was going on that day. And you could kind of tell by the reactions of a lot of the kids in the class that this was just so far above and beyond anything that anyone there had experienced. And a lot of the kids had family members from New York, which not uncommon for any Florida school or classroom to have a lot of ties to New York, New Jersey, the entire Northeast, but especially New York City. And you could kind of tell by the way the reaction was of those kids that this was just once in a lifetime type magnitude, which absolutely was the case. But now, 23 years later, despite everything that's happened, that also feels like once in a lifetime in the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I can still remember everything about that morning, from the sun poking through the window in the classroom to everyone's facial expressions when they saw what was going on, even the teacher's facial expression, especially because at that age you figure we're kids. We don't necessarily always know what's best, even though we want to believe we do. And then you see the adults in the room freaking out, and you really start to think, uh-oh, something's horribly wrong here. Even the Zenith TV that hung from the corner that she was changing the channels on, you can still see all of it. So it's still just a sore subject. It's a tough one to look back on, but yeah, it's not hard to draw back the memories and the feeling of that day from when it happened. This summer, I finally made it to One World Trade, and there was a lot to see all over that block that pertains to that day. If you're ever in the area, it's definitely worth seeing. I know the part that really grabbed me while being there were the memorial pools, and seeing all the names surrounding them, and knowing that each one of those was a person with family, friends, and interests. It just really grabs you. On a lighter note, I'm pretty happy to have all levels of football back. And I think as the years have gone on, I've become more excited about some of the comedic nuances of just football season in general. Namely, while watching the game, definitely the on-field official and the replay consultant that each broadcast has now contradicting each other no less than once a game. Something will happen on the field, and it's not entirely uncommon for something to have happened on the field where the vast majority of viewers see possibility A as what happened. The on-field ref gives you possibility B, and the replay consultant gives you possibility C, which is almost a hybrid of both, but yet you're neither entirely correct or incorrect for feeling that way. And I've just always found that funny, especially with the NFL and how close to the vest they play a lot of their replay versus, say, the UFL, who just dives the viewer right into the audio of the replay official and the on-field official talking out amongst themselves what they just saw and what they think the right call should be. Alongside that, you've got the talking heads on the major networks like Fox Sports 1 and ESPN swearing on everything holy that something will happen, whether it be this team will win 15 games or this team won't win 2 games, and it never fails. That exact team will do the exact opposite of whatever they said would happen, which you have to ignore the fact that those guys get paid to say that stuff and still end up that wrong. But it does make for entertainment if you are able to detach yourself a little bit and laugh at it. Another favorite is the weekday talk show program callers, namely the Paul Feinbaum callers. It just never gets old, and it never ceases to amaze me how out of control some of these callers get and how some of them absolutely would admit to planning their days and weeks entirely around them calling into these shows, to the point where they've become part of the show without actually being on the production team in the studio. Not that they are just that much a part of it. And I had forgotten that Feinbaum basically has essentially what would amount to a ring of honor for callers, which well deserved for a lot of them. And this was my first time listening this football season, and this afternoon it did not disappoint. Though, speaking of comedic value during a football broadcast, funniest one of the week was Alan Bowman, the Oklahoma State starting quarterback, who decided in a close game with 2 minutes left to side skip from the logo to the end zone, shooting finger guns at Arkansas and getting penalized for it, which put the game back in the balance for a while. They were able to pull off the win, but the slow motion side skip of him doing finger guns at the Arkansas sideline was without a doubt the highlight of the weekend. And it wasn't for a little bit. It went for a good 50 yards. And it does not disappoint. Absolutely worth looking up yourself if you weren't able to see it live. As for comedic or precarious instances, for myself, I was tasked with dropping off an order that I can't even say was the first time I've had to do this, though it was pretty on par with some of the other orders I've had to do in the past. And I usually like to just ignore what I'm picking up, though sometimes it's impossible. I still haven't figured out a possible, well, maybe it's this scenario that actually makes sense or even would check out. but the order at 1:30 in the morning on a weekday, no less, consisted of flock-lined rubber gloves, a 50 count of nitrile disposable gloves, 12 count of paper towels, 2 different kinds of Lysol, both the wipes and the spray, and then a 3 count of microfiber cloths. As I previously said, it wasn't the first time I've had to do this, though it's the first time in a while, and I still haven't come up with, maybe in this case, an alibi for what that would be for, at that hour no less. But it does make me wonder if anyone else would be able to come up with an explanation for why someone would need all of the above at that hour, that time of the week, that would make sense for reasons other than the obvious. What would be your best guess? A 50 count of nitrile disposable gloves, 12 count of paper towels, 2 different kinds of Lysol, both the wipes and the spray, and then a 3 count of microfiber cloths. As I previously said, it wasn't the first time I've had to do this, though it's the first time in a while, and I still haven't come up with, maybe in this case, an alibi for what that would be for, at that hour no less. But it does make me wonder if anyone else would be able to come up with an explanation for why someone would need all of the above at that hour, that time of the week, that would make sense for reasons other than the obvious. What would be your best guess?